Hey, how's it going? So, recently I was playing a card game with friends, just a bunch of Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff like that, and I learned something about a friend of mine that I don't think I ever really clicked with me before. He's someone who never really got into Yu-Gi-Oh! But he really got into Magic, but he didn't really get into, like, winning Magic, if that makes sense. We play Commander, and we all build up boards, but he surrenders, typically, before, like, he really has to engage in combat. And something I learned is that sometimes people like playing card games with friends, but they don't like actually hurting their friends. Even if it's just like life points on a piece of paper or something, he just doesn't like fighting. I think that's very interesting. So I decided, hey, Doom Bunny, I'm gonna design you a deck that involves zero combat, and we'll see if it's any good. I've cooked up something that I think you'll enjoy, considering how you love not only building up boards, but messing with people's plays. This here is Runick Jar. So, this is combining one of Doom Bunny's favorite little archetypes, the Jar cards, with the Runick playstyle to create a stall mill deck that does not use the combat phase and controls the opponent while draining them of resources. It's very funny. It works best when people don't know you're playing them, but I thought it'd be cool to go over this real quick and to explain how the deck works. So, hey, how's it going? I'm Hakzpro, and today we're looking at Runick Jar. There's also a Forbidden Engine in the side. I'll explain all the cards in a moment. But first things first, what does this deck do? As I mentioned, it's a mill deck. All the Runick cards have effects where you activate an effect, and it allows you to banish the top cards of the opponent's deck. All the Runick cards kind of share that as like part of the effect that they activate on their primary effect. These all also double as fusion cards that allow you to fusion summon into monsters. But if you use any of them, you have to skip your next battle phase. So you're constantly locking yourself out of the battle phase, and you're unable to fight your opponent, but you're constantly banishing their cards as well, so it's fine. There's also the Jar cards, which are all just a bunch of flip monsters that disrupt the board, wipe everything, and cause your opponent to mill even more cards. These two strategies, in combination with a few floodgates and a very funny Cyberstein, can create a board state where you're constantly milling out your opponent, building up your own little impressive board, stopping your opponent from making plays, and winning without ever hurting them. I think it's funny. There's a few different strategies that use Runick, just because Runick's really good for stall. I've been playtesting a little bit with Runick Sprite as well. I think Sprite is more combat focused, so I wanted to focus on Jars today. So, let's go over the card by card real quick, starting with the Jars. We are focusing on Cyber Jar, Morphing Jar, and Morphing Jar number 2 today. We would play 3 Cyber and 3 Morphing Jar if they weren't currently limited, which is unfortunate, but it's just what we gotta deal with. Cyber Jar, flip, destroy all monsters on the field, then both players reveal the top 5 cards of their deck, special summon all revealed level 4 or lower monsters in face-up attack position or face-up defense position, also add any remaining cards to their hand. It's pretty cool. It forces your opponent to dig through a bunch of resources. It also allows you to set up another jar if you mill into it. And it's your opponent draws 5. This deck does need to disrupt plays, so it's not always the best thing to give Cyber Jar just fill up their hand. But it does help them to mill out, and if they're already pretty low, Cyber Jar will finish off the deal by just forcing them to flip. On flip, forcing them to draw into an empty deck. There is a Morphing Jar, which is both players discard as many cards as possible, then draw 5, same kind of deal. And Morphing Jar number 2. Flip, shuffle all monsters on the field into the deck, then excavate the top of the deck until they excavate the same number of monsters shuffled into their main deck. Special summon all level 4 or lower and face down defense position. Also set the remaining cards to the graveyard. Morphing Jar number 2 is probably the best for this deck, besides maybe just base Morphing Jar. Number 2's ability to force your opponent to excavate through a ton of monsters can be really good. It also sends them all to the grave, meaning that they aren't getting card advantage in hand, which is good. There are some decks that play a lot of high-level monsters, even still, so Morphing Jar number 2 can really mess them up. It's not, like, game-ending or anything if the Morphing Jar 2 shows up, which is why it's, like, not hit on the limited list at all, but it can still help you out. Especially since you're going to be banishing a lot of playmakers and combo pieces with the other cards. Like, it works out. We're also playing Cyberstein, which is going to pay 5,000 life points to special summon a fusion monster from the X deck. There's a few different targets for that here. There's a Predaplant, there's the normal target, There's an invoked card because I think it's funny. There is another invoked card because this one's better. The ability to lock out monster effects every turn is pretty funny, not gonna lie. Just more lockdown for your lockdown deck. But yeah, Cyberstein's really cool. He's also a really good target to get hit with anything that negates monster effects. Pay 5,000, get hit with Effect Veiler. Very fun time, I know. But Cyberstein's a good card for just cheating out some of these cool little disruption guys. So that's it for the main deck monster lineup. However, all these quick play spells can also cheat you out these kind of fusion guys, the Runick fusions in particular. So it is easy to at least have a guy on board no matter what. Real quick little tech options. Instant fusion, pay 1,000, special summon level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, but it can't attack and it's destroyed during the end phase. You can cheat out any of these like Runick guys if you need to in a pinch, but you probably don't need to. You can cheat out this invoked if you're afraid of hand traps and you really don't need to activate more monster effects for the rest of the turn. But you can also get up Millennia Eyes Restrict, which will eat a hand trap, and Thousand Eyes Restrict, which will eat something on the field. You can then link them off into a Link Karibo, into a Secure Gardena, to make it to where essentially you're just kind of linking up into a once per turn if you take battle damage or effect damage, you take none. You just kind of link into this so you can make yourself immune to a single battle. It stops OTKs, and it's really like the best thing to do with these guys because during the end phase they blow up otherwise. Yeah, they're good. I like them. Upstart Goblins here as well. Again, you're not hurting your opponent, so giving them life points doesn't matter. In fact, they might see it as a kindness to give them some extra life points to play around with. And you get to draw a card, which, you know, Upstart Goblin's just a good card overall. We are playing the Runick cards. How many of them? All of them. There's one OCG card that isn't here, and there's one card that isn't here that's $26. You'll notice this deck, even with the side, is about $64. I'm running a subpar number of Runick cards in this deck because I want the budget to make sense. So we're only playing one Fountain, which is a $10 card, and we're only playing, I think we're playing Zero the Searcher, aren't we? Yeah, we're playing Zero Runick Tip, which is $26. And I think there's another big card in here. Yeah, Hugin. Hugin's $11 as well. This one's also really good. It searches out the field spell. But you can play these both at one and have it work fine for what we're doing. So, let's get into Runick cards. Runick Destruction. All these have a shared effect, which is that you can special summon a Runick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. This allows you to... This kind of conflicts with the idea of using the Link monsters, but like in a pinch, if you're forced into these guys to do things, then you just have to deal with it. This one, Runick Destruction, targets a spell trap the opponent controls, destroys it, then banishes the top 4 cards of the opponent's deck. Dispelling, if your opponent adds cards from their deck to their hand, especially via a Cyber Jar or Morphing Jar effect, except for during the draw phase, discard one random card from their hand, then banish the top 2 cards of their deck. This is just to punish them even more for their drawing, especially if you're fighting a deck that actually just does normal draw power. This is just really good. Destruction is really good against spell traps in general. Flashing Fire, target a special summon monster the opponent controls, destroy them, banish the top 2 cards from the opponent's deck. That's just really good for blowing up big guys that are part of combos, or just destroying end bosses that don't have enough protection on them. Very funny effect, very useful. Freezing Curses, target an effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects, and then banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. This is only till end of turn, but it is pretty useful to be able to negate monster effects. Again, this just stops combos from activating. It's pretty good. This one is used in combination with Dispelling. Golden Droplets used with Dispelling to force a draw. Your opponent draws a card, then you banish the top 4 cards of their deck. This is the same amount of mill power as something like a Morphing Jar, so it's very useful for messing with the opponent. Again, it's used with Dispelling to banish, I believe, a total of... Oh, what? You draw through to 7, but you banish 6. That's very funny. I really like that little combination. Flashing Fire, Freezing Curses are better against the monsters. Dispelling and Golden Droplet are better against just the player itself. Slumber, target a face-up monster in the field. Next time the monster is destroyed by battle or card effect, it is not destroyed. Also, it cannot attack. Then, banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. This one's weird. You can use it to protect your guys from being destroyed. In a pinch, if you need to banish your opponent's cards for whatever reason, you can also use it on an opponent's monster, just get that banish top 3 cards of the opponent's deck effect to go off. Slumber is also really good to just use whenever you need to make a fusion monster, because these fusion monsters are pretty good, and Slumber is kind of the least of all the cards here. Smithing Stone. Okay, actually, Smithing Stone might be the least. Banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck out to the number of cards they control. This can be really good. This can be like 4 or 5 cards. Pretty easy if you just wait for some buildup, but it has no other effect, so meh. These two are really good at getting out the fusion. I guess this one's technically a better thing to use to get out the fusion than this would be, but both these guys are pretty good just used to cheat out of fusion monster cards. Runick Allure is a continuous spell. Each time a quick play is activated, banish the top card of your opponent's deck. You can only control one of these. We're running 2 just in case it explodes or we need to hard draw into it. But this just allows you to, every time you banish, just banish another one. Again, we're going for mill. We're going for hard drawing the opponent out. Like, we just need as much as we can get. Here is the key piece of the deck. And if you want to spend more money on the deck, Runick Fountain's the way to go. Runick Fountain is a card that says you can activate Runick quick play spells from your hand during your opponent's turn. This changes all of this from kind of a trap-like deck that is a little slow to, yeah, you can now just keep all your cards safely in your hand and just play them as they apply. Additionally, Runick Fountain, once per turn, if you activate a Runick quick play spell, it lets you target up to 3 Runick quick play spells in your graveyard, place them at the bottom of the deck, and then draw the same amount. If you do this correctly, you've used 3 Runick cards, there are 3 engraved, you shuffle all 3 back into the bottom of the deck, and then you draw 3 cards, refilling your hand with more Runick cards for more disruption. Runick has kind of outclassed Sky Striker as the control strategy, and its ability to recycle its own resources means that even if for some reason you're starting to deck yourself out with stuff like Morphing Jar or Cyber Jar, like Fountain will make sure that you can get that stuff back, no problem, while still gaining card advantage. It's nuts! Real quick, before we hit the fusions, we're going to talk about the normal floodgates. Goes and match, only 1 attribute. Rivalry rewards, only 1 type. Skill drain, no monster effects. You don't normally need them. Skill drain can conflict with your jars. If you find that skill drain is conflicting, just feel free to throw in like more of the other floodgates and just remove the skill drain entirely. But skill drain is useful whenever your opponent has a board and you just don't have anything set up. It can stop your opponent from making a lot of plays. And then there can be only 1. Each player controls only 1 type of each monster. These are all similar. This is 1 type, and this is 1 type. Like, you can double down on this. You can also remove there can be only, and just put in more rivalry. You can remove rivalry, and put in more there can be only. Again, these are all, like, ratios of traps that you can play around with. It's not too bad price-wise, and it's overall just fine. It's nothing spectacular, but it's part of the control playstyle to prevent your opponent from building up too big of a board and wiping you out. So, moving on. We've already talked about a couple of the instant fusion targets and the little line you can do with them, but you might not want to do that. The Runick fusions all fusion into the extra monster zone, and some of them are even good. Let's go from highest level to lowest. This one has a fusion requirement that is funny because you're never going to need to use it. When an attack is declared involving this card in your extra monster zone, you can banish the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. Neither player can take battle damage from attacks involving this card. If this card in the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target a Runick quick play spell in your graveyard, add it to your hand. This is a little bit of recycling, it's a little bit of extra banishing. It's fine. If you really need to go into the battle phase to just make sure your opponent banishes a little bit more, you can, but keep in mind your Runick cards keep locking you out, so you have to do it before you start using Runick cards. I don't know. He's in the deck because he's cheap and he's supposed to be here, but he's kind of disappointing overall. You don't really need to run him if you really don't like the look of this guy. He is a little planty. There is Jerry. Ooh, it's Jerry. Jerry Beans, man. No. Jerry, the Runick Fangs, cannot be destroyed by card effects. If this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can target a non-quick play Runick spell in your graveyard, add it to your hand. This guy, when this card is destroyed by battle, you can target around the field and destroy it. This guy is the way you recycle Runick Fountain if it gets destroyed by like MST or something. You use this guy to bounce this back to your hand. You can also get a lure back to your hand. This one bounces the quick play spells on its death. This one bounces the non-quick plays on its summon, which is a little bit tricky to keep track of, but just it's the 2 effects these guys are going for. Moomin is when it's special summoned from your extra deck, you can discard a card, add a Runick continuous spell from your deck to your hand. So if you need to search for a lure for whatever reason, you can. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a Runick card you control or a set card you control, you can banish this card you control and you get the activation if you do destroy it. And then during the end phase, you can gain 1,000. This protects your field spell from being hit. That's like the big thing that it's trying to do. Is protect Runick Fountain from being hit by anything. So sometimes summoning this, if you already have Fountain in hand, Summoning Moomin and just kind of like passing on that, gaining 1,000 and just letting the turn play out. Sometimes that's the best play. Other times, the best play is summoning Hugin. Runick Wings is, when this card is special summoned from the extra deck, you can discard a card, add a Runick field spell from your deck to your hand. If another card you control be destroyed by card effect, you can banish this card you control instead. If this card of field is destroyed by battle of card effect, returns to the extra deck. So, this one stops you from losing your set cards and losing cards you control that are targeted. This one stops your cards that you control from being destroyed by card effect. The advantage here is that this stops stuff like Cosmic Cyclone, which doesn't banish, it destroys, but it does still target. This stops stuff like MST and Harpy's Feather Duster because it prevents destruction by card effect, while this one just prevents like targeting. This one's more widely usable, but because this one searches out the ever important field spell, 9 times out of 10 this is what you're going for. Additionally, if it destroys itself, it goes back into the extra deck, so you can just keep recycling this, which is good. The Runick extra deck does its job. 2 cards do it really well. A couple cards are good boys, so we don't really complain. Going back to the instant fusion targets real quick. Predaplant Dracostapelia. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target face-up monster your opponent controls. Oh, sorry, not instant fusion. Cyberstein targets. Dracostapelia. Instant fusion has a limit to 5 and it blows up during the end phase. Dracostapelia. Target face-up monster. Predaplant counter goes on it. And if it's level 2 or higher, it becomes level 1 as long as it has the counter. Additionally, negate all the activated effects of opponent's monsters that have Predaplant counters. This is just a little guy that you put on the field that negates a monster effect. It is also a big body that is somewhat difficult for decks to get around, and so they have to prepare for it and build up bigger fields to get rid of it, which, if you're disrupting correctly with your Runick cards, should be perfectly fine and like manageable. Last Warrior from Another Planet is the classic combo you do with Cyberstein. Last Warrior says, when this card is special summoned, destroy all other monsters you control. Neither player can summon monsters. Drop this turn 1, just see what your opponent does. A lot of the times it's nothing. Your Runick cards don't really benefit from this. The opponent playing cards does actually benefit Runicks more than just negating summoning. However, negating summoning is really strong, and some decks don't have outs to this. So, if you can get this turn 1, a successful Cyberstein's like summon, you can do that. It's pretty cool. More than likely you would be attacking with this though, which is kind of cringe, so it's debatable whether or not you'd actually play it itself. Invoked Rajin. I ain't gonna lie to you, Chief. I put this one in here just because I wanted another card in the extra deck. Invoked Rajin says, once per turn, quick effect, you can target face-up monster in the field, change to the face-down defense position. I guess you can use it to reflip a morphing jar, but you normal summon Cyberstein. It's there because it's funny. I don't know. Invoked Rajin isn't in here for a good reason. What is here for a good reason though is Invoked Calgia? Invoked Calgia. Each player can only attempt to activate 1 monster effect per turn. Each player can only attack with 1 monster during the battle phase. This is a bad instant fusion target because instant fusion blows this up during the end phase, but it's a great Cyberstein target because it stops your opponent from activating monster effects. Like, period. They get 1, and then they can't activate anymore, and they can attack once, and then they can't attack again. It's pretty cool. The small body is small, however, stuff like Slumber can protect it, and stuff like Flashing Fire can stop big targets from hitting the field for too long. So, I like him. He's a good guy. He looks like he's wearing a suit. I guess it's Alistair the Invoker's suit, but whatever. He's useful. He's a good card. Very good control card. And that's it for the main and the extra deck. The side deck I'm playing around with. I don't really feel comfortable with anything in particular. This is ratios of traps. If you find your floodgates just aren't controlling enough, you can just side in Torrential Tributes and just destroy all monsters on the field for fun. You can just do it. Torrential Tribute, you don't need a field, to be honest. Like, you don't need monsters to play the game. If your morphing jars get flipped, or if they're already gone because your opponent just destroyed them via other means, like, don't be afraid to Torrential Tribute them. It's okay. Additionally, if stuff like Morphing Jar 2 happens, you should still be able to Torrential Tribute after that, so your opponent then blows up their field the moment they get it face down. That's also funny. You can do that too. Alternatively, there is the Condemned Witch line. Condemned Witch is a part of the Forbidden line, which lets you add forbidden quick play spells from your deck to your hand, and then during the main phase, you contribute a special summon level 4 fairy monster from your deck. except for itself. The forbidden cards are all different control cards. They're all weaker than the Runicks. However, with Runick Allure activating whenever you use quick play spell cards, it does synergize, so you can do this, which makes cards unaffected by other spell traps. This, which makes it to where your monsters can't be destroyed by card effects, and this makes monsters unaffected by other spell traps. Or this, which is a, like, gain attack, but its effects are negated forbidden card. These little control strategies are useful. If you are in a situation where you don't trust Runick Fountain can stay on the field for any prolonged period of time, you can go into Condemned Witch and tribute it for Condemned Maiden, which once per duel will let you play a quick play spell card from your hand. So, in an absolute desperation Hail Mary, you can throw down Condemned Witch, get a forbidden card, set that card, and then with a Runick card in hand and like Fountain on the field, if Fountain explodes or you just weren't able to get to Fountain, you can go into Condemned Maiden and then play a quick play from your hand. Just like, I really need to get that flashing fire to go off kind of thing. It's an option. Alternatively, you can also go for Barrier Statue of the Heavens, which locks player out of special summoning except for light monsters. Or you can go for Aurora Paragon, which stops both players from special summoning, but when another monster is normal summoned to either player's field, destroy it. After your opponent normal summons, if you tribute Condemned Witch and go into this, your opponent can no longer special summon and they're stuck with whatever they normal summoned. This is also a pretty funny little logout card, and it's an applicable target for Condemned Witch. So that's an option. If you wanted to go this route, I would recommend converting this side deck into like 3 of each of the forbidden cards that you like. Technically speaking, I don't put it in here because it's expensive still, but where is Forbidden Droplet? Forbidden Drop. Yeah, technically this card also counts towards this like weird playstyle of searching out Forbiddens. This also searches Forbidden Droplet. That's still a $20 card. This deck is still $64 even with the side. Adjusting these ratios will probably make it even cheaper because a lot of the side deck's value is currently coming from like Goes and Mash, and there can be rivalry. Like, the side deck's cheap. The extra deck's a little bit pricey. The main deck's a little bit... Well, nothing here is pricey. It's $60 for a deck. $60 for a pretty cool little control deck. But again, if you want to make an extra deck that means anything, either focus more on altering out a bunch of traps that do a bunch of cool stuff that affect the game in ways you want, such as like Compulsory, which bounces cards, or Torrential, or whatever you want, or focus more on the Condemned Witch line, find some cool level 4 fairies to summon that lock out your opponent from doing things, and see what you can do with Condemned Maiden. But yeah, I'm going to go do a couple example games real quick. I'll be right back. So as always, I'm going to do it against random AI bot. Here we have a bunch of stuff we can do during the draw phase. I don't think I need to. It's my turn though. Dispelling's probably not going to come up with a hand like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to, during the draw phase, use it to special summon a monster. We're going to special summon Hugin. And defensive summon, why not? Hugin's going to let us discard, I guess, Upstart Goblin to get Runick Fountain. I want to keep Warlords, just because, again, control strategy. Stopping your opponent from controlling more than one type can be very useful. So I'm going to activate Fountain, and then I'm going to pass, because the opponent does not have any spell traps, and the opponent does not have any effect monsters to negate. It's trying to get me to activate. Oh, yeah, I can activate Warlords. Okay. Sorry, I got a little lost there. So that's a Lightning Storm. Destroys all spell traps. I feel like I can banish this, no? Yeah, okay. You're gonna let me banish it after activation. As it's attempting to be destroyed, Hugin gets banished. I'm going to stop that field spell from resolving by destroying it with this. It explodes. Cool. Now, I'm not going to activate Runick Fountain yet. I'm going to wait until I activate the third one. Which I will now, because I don't want that effect to activate. Target effect monster, negate it. And then I'm going to do this to shuffle back 3. I really don't care what order they're in. And now I've got 2 more. This one's based on cards they control, and this one based on a special summon monster being blown up. So they burn for 1,000 for no reason. A Lingaribo has showed up. So the issue with Warlords here is that the enemy is playing a Cyber deck, so it doesn't actually lock them out of anything. I am being attacked by the Lingaribo, and I will accept the damage. I hope they know that this is personally very hurtful. Okay. So, we can force them into a draw. So at this point, we've already banished 7 of their cards. They have 3 in the graveyard because of our plays and disruption, and they have 27 cards left in deck. Set the Morphing Jar. And we also have a pretty decent setup to where we can force our opponent to draw. We can force our opponent to exile, and then we can force our opponent to banish, and then we can draw 3 again with the Runick Fountain. And so yeah, this is just kind of a laid-back deck too. It requires you to kind of pay attention to what your opponent's doing. A lot more than other decks might. But, you know, it is what it is. Let's see here. The opponent is again using the island. I can't really stop it, so I'm going to wait for them to build up a little bit of a board. Splash Mage. I'll let that resolve, and then I'll go into the Smithing Stoneworm. Select 4. 4 is gone. That effect still doesn't work, but that's fine. I don't remember what this thing does at all. Special summon. Scratch destroys one long battle. I am going to, instead of letting that finish, go ahead and blow that up. And it's gone. And now there's a guy. He searches a monster. And for the sake of replenishing my hand, I'm going to let the opponent draw a card and then get rid of 4 cards. Alternatively, I can get out the fusions and not let them draw that card, but they wouldn't banish their cards either. But it would still let me activate Fountain to do the recycle. And you can see very quickly how important Fountain is to this deck. Fountain is so pivotal in making sure you have anything you need. Dispelling is probably just trying to let me do silly things. So now it's the battle phase. And as we enter into the battle phase, the opponent doesn't attack because it has 500 attack, and that'd be silly. We have a Golden Droplet that'll let us into a fusion if we want. We're actually going to do the Dispelling Golden Droplet combo on our turn instead. We're going to Morphing Jar, because I think it'd be funny. There's a Morphing Jar. So we've returned the Morphing Jar, and the rest is in our grave. Since this is now in grave, we can use it as part of our 3 back, so we can draw 3. But because the opponent's card was extra deck, it did not cause the deck thing to happen. This is fine. We're going to activate a lure. We are going to activate Golden to let our opponent draw 1. And a lure activates. We're not going to activate Fountain yet, but we're going to, because they have Dawn to draw, we're going to activate Dispelling to force them to discard 1 and then banish a couple more. Allure is activating twice in total, and we are going to use Fountain to send these 3 back. And then we will draw 3. Destruction will allow us to blow up a spell trap, and that's the game. Runick Allure will attempt to banish nothing. We will go to end phase, and the opponent will lose via deck out. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to show off. Just a quick little overview of Runick Jar. The Jar cards work really well with this playstyle, and I greatly enjoy just kind of kicking back, not hurting my opponent, but just kind of watching them squirm a little. I hope you like this Doom Bunny, and to whoever else is watching, I hope you enjoy. And yeah, you guys have a good one.